Hey there and welcome to the Big Apple School podcast. My name is Sam.
I'm Reyno.
And today we're asking what's the crack about why I really like Batman, me, Samuel Potts. So I'm going to talk to you about how and where I've seen Batman and ingested Batman, how old I was when I really started to get into Batman and enjoy it and love it. And who is Batman for me? How is he best represented? Who is the best Batman actor? What is the best suit in Batman? Have I ever dressed up as Batman? What do you think? Can you guess?
Even my students say, "Oh, Sam is crazy about Batman." So
Really?
I'm guessing.
Really?
Yes.
I thought I kept it low key. To be honest.
I have bad news for you. All of Big Apple knows that you like Batman.
It's not bad to me. Why I think Batman is popular, because even if people, and you're not a super lover of Batman, right?
Not
But
crazy,
you'll admit he's popular.
Yes, of course.
So we'll look at that. Why or do we think that our superheroes need to suffer or heroes need to suffer? What kind of Batman do we want to see in the future? And some news maybe about that. So that's all the kind of stuff we're going to discuss. Batman.
And in case the listeners were worried about what I was going to be doing here, I'll ask the questions.
We have to give you something to do.
I have to do something.
And why not? I mean, it would be boring if I were sitting here on my own.
Maybe you would. I'm sure
I would
you
feel
can.
lonely.
I'm sure you can speak about Batman for at least
feel lonely.
half an hour without any interruption.
I need your help. Great.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Sam, tell us how you know Batman.
Good question. Great question.
Great question. So maybe
I may have led you in the question.
Maybe before you answer, I do know you mentioned.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I'm not crazy about Batman.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about too many of these superheroes.
Right.
For me, Batman is different point.
Do you think? I think, as far as Spider-Man, that there are too many flipping films. Do you feel the way about Batman? That there are too many.
I feel that for me, he's quite unique.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I appreciate the uniqueness of Batman.
Yeah.
He's different from the others. I somehow feel he's more human than the rest of the superheroes.
Yeah. And we'll delve into that, actually.
Excellent.
That's something I want to talk about.
And he's very popular. He's very popular. I remember I had a little Batmobile.
So even you
car. I
got sucked in.
Exactly.
To the Bat universe.
Tell us how you know Batman.
Basically, everything.
Okay.
There you are. Podcast over. I watched the TV show, like the old wacky 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe that was my first acquaintance with Batman. Then I would have later on probably read the comics, graphic novels or comics, you know, and cartoons. Then in the 90s, there became an animated series which is very popular and is very good.
Okay.
And then I think it's sort of, I know him from all of that, but also from the films from Tim Burton. So I think it was 60s Batman that I was introduced to. And to be honest, it's not my favorite Batman, but it was there and it was on TV and it was fun, lighthearted,
so
colorful.
how old were you when this?
That's a really good question.
happened?
I mean, it was recorded and made in the 60s. So
Of course. You remember when you watched this?
But I guess it was probably on TV repeats and stuff on TV. So I guess it probably was on TV from as young as I remember. I do not know how young.
Okay.
So, but I've read comics, not all the comics because there are a huge amount of comics.
So you've been bat crazy all your life.
Read comics, graphic novels. Well, I think it became popular more for me when I was like 10, 11, 12.
Okay.
But it was always there. It was saying, that's kind of, I'll watch this, you know, or, this isn't bad. But I think it was, you know, and it's, it's got all the kind of things a kid would need, right? Not a superhero, but a hero as far as I'm concerned. So I would say about 12-ish, I was definitely hooked. And I think it was actually, all this Batman stuff, which I liked and I thought was fun and great. But I think it was when I watched Tim Burton's films.
Okay.
There's the film Batman 1989 and then Batman Returns 1992.
Okay.
And actually...
Who was Batman in those two?
Michael Keaton. Michael
great
Keaton
actor.
was Batman. And it was actually controversial that he would be Batman. I don't remember, but I only watched them afterwards, But when I watched them, I was still, actually their 15 certificate in the UK. I don't know if in other places.
Okay.
And so technically I shouldn't have been watching them, but there's nothing bad or terrible in them. A little bit more blood than I was used to watch, because I didn't normally watch 15s or 18s as a young boy or 12-year-old even. So I was put off a little bit by a little bit of blood, which now I would think nothing of.
Of course.
But as a 12-year-old, I was like, ooh, I don't like that. But I really was hooked from those films. And strangely, Batman Returns was less popular, but for me, I connected more with that. I don't know why, but I like it more. Maybe because it's more of a Tim Burton film.
I was going to comment about this Tim Burton thing, because he has a way of grabbing your
gothic and weird characters.
Very weird characters and specific type of actors he uses. I quite enjoy his films. Maybe you're convincing me to watch maybe one or two more Batman films than I have.
I will say this, it's actually one of my all-time favorite films, but I will also admit that it's not perfect.
Okay.
It feels very staged in places, like the way the cars move and stuff in car chases, and
it is very old
and things like that. Yeah, it's true.
Graphics, computer graphics, not quite as well developed back then as it is now.
But I'm just thinking of what people would criticize it for. It feels a bit staged. It's not. I mean, it's quite theatrical, but there is a drama in it. And connected with Batman of all people, but there's a drama in it between Batman and Catwoman and Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle.
Okay.
Which to me is coupled with the music. To me, it's fine cinematography. It's great.
I'm going to test your knowledge now. Was Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman in one? Actually, maybe I saw this.
Can't test my knowledge like that. It's too easy.
Okay, sorry. It's very difficult for me.
This is something I've been watching for over 20 years.
So actually, I have seen this movie then, but obviously a very, very long time ago, because I do specifically remember Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman.
Danny DeVito was Penguin. Yes. Perfect as Penguin. I mean,
prize-wise, of course.
Brilliant. And Danny DeVito, I've started to watch some YouTube clips of him, not in character, but as himself,
as Danny DeVito.
And he's quite a funny guy.
He is quite funny,
quite humorous.
Yeah, he is quite funny
and witty. I would say.
So, with your vast experience in watching Batman movies and reading Batman graphic novels, who is Batman for you? How is he the best represented?
So for me as a child, I thought, it's Batman Returns or Batman. Batman Returns for me was the iconic and the real Batman. But then, before or after, or even throughout that time, I was watching the cartoons, the animated series, and they are fantastic. They are such good quality, and for me, Batman is everything he needs to be in those cartoons. He's strong, he's intellectual, he's a detective, but he's also great with martial arts. He's imperfect because he's human, but at the same time, he's like superior in intellect and skill, in agility, and all of that.
And very wealthy, which helps.
Very wealthy, and he's represented fantastically well. So actually, you've got later on. It wasn't until later on I didn't even watch the Christopher Nolan, the very first one, until after it came out, because I was focusing on other things at that time in my life. But again, they're fantastic films. But to me, they're a kind of modern adaptation of Batman. For me, the iconic, the real representation of Batman is maybe what I learned as a youth. It's those cartoons, especially that cartoon, the animated series, Batman animated, fantastic. So to me, that's Batman.
Okay, and if you had to choose an actor, which actor represented Batman best for you, do you think?
So you go way back to Adam West, which was just campy 60s, the tall, campy 60s guy.
Okay.
That was one aspect of Batman, but it was, to me, that's not Batman. I mean, that's a Batman, a representation of Batman, but not a good one for me. So I would say, great, loved him, but for me, it's not Batman, but it's not my Batman. Michael Keaton, so love Michael Keaton's Batman, but I would criticize it in that he wasn't very acrobatic, he wasn't very strong. I mean, moving in that suit, though. Yes, you can't blame him because moving in that suit. Because
Michael Keaton is not
one big very rubber.
True story, but if you look at Michael Keaton and the roles he's played, it's unusual for him. It is quite unusual for him. So understandably, it would have been a challenge for him.
Christian Bale, to be honest, the actor himself, he's not my favorite actor, but I think that he represented. I mean, I don't want to say represent because I've said the cartoon, but I think he's maybe the best Batman actor because he's done the Bruce Wayne well. He's been very, I mean, the films were so good and such a range of issues and things about Batman, showing Bruce Wayne, showing all kinds of aspects of Bruce Wayne's life and all kinds of things that Batman did, all kinds of throughout those 3 films. So, I mean, he has had more screen time than the other Batman guys. You know, George Clooney, which was very wacky and funny, and nipples on the batsuit. There was Val Kilmer, which only had 1 film as well as George Clooney. So, I mean, Christian Bale has had 3 films where the other guys have only had at most
1 or 2.
Ben Affleck now, well, Ben Affleck has had, let me see, Batman v Superman, and then Justice League. Anything else? That's all, isn't it?
I don't know.
And
you're educating me here today.
So he's only had 2 as well, and I must admit, I like his aspect of Batman too, because he's big and muscly and tall guy, built like a brick house, you know, what we would say, or slightly
there's an adjustment to that, but it's okay. Yeah.
And I like that too. And I would say that all of these are good. But for me, because from my childhood, the best actor was Michael Keaton. But yeah. So Michael Keaton.
I think...
So cut a long story short.
In my opinion, Christian Bale is a very underrated actor.
Yeah.
I remember him clearly from American Psycho, which is a very different movie. But so I have watched Batman The Dark Knight with Christian Bale. A little bit of preparation for today's podcast. Actually, to be frank, I'm not a fan, but I definitely want to watch the other 2 movies with him as Batman. I did enjoy the way he portrayed this. His human side is very human.
Yeah, true. And he's got that connection to, spoiler alert if you haven't watched them already, but you should have, by the way, but he's got that connection to the Rachel character, which makes him more human. And Alfred,
does she follow through, Maggie Gyllenhaal? Does she appear in the second? No, she's dead.
Yeah, she died in the second.
She died. No, she died in this one.
She died in that's the second film you're talking. I mean, the second Christopher Nolan film.
Okay. So I didn't.
So Christopher Nolan.
I need to watch
Christopher
the first
Nolan
one.
was the director for these 3 films, and Christian Bale was the actor.
Actor for the 3.
And she actually, that actress. Sorry, not the character. The actress wasn't in the first one. She was played by
someone else.
By someone else.
Okay. This is Maggie Gyllenhaal, Jake Gyllenhaal's sister, actually.
Oh, is she, right?
Yes.
Right.
Very unusual surname.
So
in fact, you can see the family resemblance.
She died, spoiler alert, in the second one.
Okay.
She's not in the actress isn't in the first one, but the character is.
Okay. Interesting.
But in the third, he has another kind of love interest.
Okay,
also.
I enjoyed it. Heath Ledger, obviously, in that movie is fantastic. So, yes, not being a Batman fan, I definitely actually will search for a movie or 2 more on your recommendation, which ones I should watch. You did say that this particular one is like not the ultimate, but... Yeah,
it is.
You said actually it's the ultimate one to watch.
So I'm not saying... What I don't want to say, for me, it's not the best it's not the Batman, the iconic Batman or the way I imagine Batman. But nevertheless, it is the best. For me, it's the best Batman film. And I think most people will agree that it's the best. It's just, fantastic plot, fantastic actors, and Heath Ledger acted
amazing,
fantastic.
That was amazing.
I mean, I saw prior to watching that film, I saw a lot of Heath Ledger stuff, or I felt it was a lot, but you could almost not recognize the guy there. You know, none of him is showing there. It's Joker, and so believable,
incredible. Yeah, it was really, really, really incredible. So. For me, this would be an embarrassing question. I'm sure maybe for you it won't be, but have you ever dressed up as Batman? And please elaborate. I would love to know the circumstances under which this happened.
Yeah, so I was, it wasn't my choice per se, but the suit was bought for me for my birthday. And I...
By whom?
By my older brother.
Okay.
And sometimes my older brother kind of encourages me in some things that I wouldn't automatically do.
Okay.
But I must admit, I'm a guy who likes to dress up on occasions, but I will not, you will never find me, or I would be surprised if you do find me going to a Comic-Con dressed up.
Okay.
You know, that, or going outside for long distances dressed up. That's not the kind of person that I am. But I must admit I like dressing up.
Okay.
And it will be kind of close to home. I'll not really go outside or go anywhere.
Obviously, we have different definitions of dressing up, because for me, dressing up is a suit and tie and very smart, not in a Batman costume.
No, well, so I don't traditionally like suit and tie because I had to do it. I had to wear it for school most of my school years.
Me too.
And I hated it. And even at work at times, I've had to wear a shirt and tie, and I hated it. But if I have to kind of dress up as in unusual clothes, something about that I enjoy. So anyway, my brother bought me kind of a muscle suit.
Okay.
Foam muscle suit with a bat. I mean, it's all Batman, right? And it hasn't got the boots or anything. So I actually wore my own black welly boots, if you like. And this muscle suit, like a gray Batman suit, not a cool, like a cartoonish one.
Yeah.
And it's got the cowl and everything you pull over your face, and a cape and everything. And for some reason, I don't know if it was a dare, but about 10 years ago or so, I run around the block near my house
in this suit,
dressed up as Batman. I don't know why, but that's what I ended up doing.
Maybe our listeners and our Big Apple students will look at you a little bit differently after this podcast. I certainly am looking at you.
I'm Batman. Swear to me. Learn English.
It's not something I normally do, but it's not something that I'm against either.
Okay, excellent. Excellent.
So there you go. I'm not particularly embarrassed by it, to be honest. But maybe I should. Maybe I should be.
For one, you shouldn't. I would be, but you shouldn't. That's okay. Why do you think Dear Batman is so popular?
Because you mentioned it earlier, he is human. For me, I got to be honest, I liked Superman, the 70s films when I was a kid, the music and he's saving. Yeah, and it was great, and it was got your blood going, and it was exciting, and wow, what a guy. But the problem, I think, for me personally, the problem with Superman is that he's too invincible. I mean, the only thing is kryptonite, and green kryptonite or red or whatever, different versions. But
it's the green one is sort of.
But I think there's a red that does something else. Green weakens him, and the red does something else. But the fact that they had to invent something to defeat him. You know, he's so invincible, and for me, that detracts from him. He's not as interesting to me personally. But whereas Batman is so defeatable, so he has to overcome all of the stuff that is thrown at him. He has to overcome it. And the thing is, he does. He always ends up having a plan beforehand or a plan during, and he always ends up figuring out a way to defeat his enemy. So it's a kind of, he has to think ahead often. He has to overcome all of his problems, and he has so many different villains to defeat and different ways of being defeated. And so for me, he's much more human. As I alluded to earlier, he's not as, for me, I wouldn't call him a superhero. A superhero is someone with superpowers.
I agree.
Batman does not have superpowers.
Yes.
He's not a superhero, in my opinion. He's a hero. But that does not detract from him. That makes him more interesting to me. Also, the fact that he's gothic, or often depicted as gothic, to me only makes him more interesting. He's a hero. I'm contradicting my own self. He's a hero for the night. He's a hero for the shadows.
Anti-hero.
He is a anti-hero.
In my opinion, and I don't know much, but on
that's true.
What I've seen, he reminds me more of an anti-hero.
He can be an anti-hero. I mean, the thing about him too is, yes, and he can make mistakes, and he can be overly zealous. But he's so passionate. He's so driven. He's so good at what he does. And yes, he can be an anti-hero. He can be like the other heroes or superheroes hate him because he does stuff that they don't agree with at times. And in some of the comics, that's taken a little further. But in the best depictions, he never kills. He's always got that certain things that he won't do. Although, to be honest, in almost all of the films, he kills someone, which I don't particularly agree with, but don't hate at the same time. But in almost all of the films, he ends up killing someone, actually. But he shouldn't kill because that's his one rule. At least he's got that rule. And so because it's so important to him, because the motivation is to avoid people being killed, because he became Batman because his parents were killed in front of him. For me,
of course, I forgot this.
The tragedy of it as well.
I forgot this.
The gothicness, but the tragedy of it, and it's for me, he's the most human of all the heroes or superheroes.
He's human.
He's the most human, but also he's the fact that he abides in the shadows makes him that little bit more mythic at the same time.
A little bit dark. A little bit. It was going. It was going through my mind when I watched the movie yesterday. I did a lot of homework for the podcast this time. I thought about this a little bit too, because I thought he's a bit dark. He's very human. He makes mistakes. He tries very hard to stick to his own rules.
And he has to work hard at times. Like with a villain like the Joker pushes his buttons and makes him want to kill at least the Joker.
Makes him want to be bad.
Yeah.
So
and there's that struggle with him, that he always wants to kill the Joker because the Joker is killing other people, and he thinks, well, maybe I'm breaking my rule inadvertently by not killing the Joker. I'm killing other people, and I'm responsible. So there's that scar as well.
Yeah, he thinks a lot, sometimes too much. I thought,
strong silent type.
Jeez, dude, relax a little bit. You don't have to be this serious all the time. But because that is typically how
maybe
how
if
he's
I
portrayed.
actually met a man like Bruce Wayne or Batman in real life, I would be like, whoa, he's very intense. I'm not sure I'm keen on him. But the representation, for me, is great in media and stuff.
Doubtful that I would meet the likes of Bruce Wayne, though those people usually float around in social circles. I don't
that's
know.
True. He's kind of like more like a Bill Gates kind of.
Absolutely. So Bill Gates would be likely to meet him, but we not. Not so much. So, question, and we I think alluded to this in one of our previous podcasts as well when we spoke about the X-Men and things.
Yes.
Do we love to have our superheroes suffer?
Right. So some of my favorites. I mean, I like.
Actually, we need to rephrase. Heroes in this case, not superhero.
So heroes or superheroes. So Wolverine suffers a lot because of the pain and the surgery and all
physically
things.
And mentally, actually.
And he's lost a lot of people because he's an old guy. Actually, he's been around couple hundred years, maybe, in some versions at least. Batman's lost his parents. Spider-Man has lost his uncle. I mean, they've been killed in front of them. And even Superman. I mean, Superman lost his family too, and he's a lighter. He's a lighter All-American. So I mean, and in some versions, even his adopted father has died and stuff. So
Smallville, the TV series.
So And that's only a few. I mean, there are many, many more examples where all these superheroes, and I don't know if it was maybe the writers just created the characters with, okay, how do we make a superhero? Okay, there got to be something tragic, like Daredevil lost his sight with radioactive chemicals. The Flash.
Does this allude back to Shakespearean tragedies or
maybe so.
Greek mythology where we had lots of tragedies?
So I think it's a lot of them were created in sort of maybe all at once or all in one period or periods. And maybe if I admit with not a huge amount of imagination, because some of the names are not actually that imaginative. Like the Flash, he runs really fast. Well, that's not super imaginative. Spider-Man isn't. Not that that's a bad thing, but when you think of it, they're not super imaginative. Like Batman, it's a man that dresses as a bat. Wow. Okay.
Interesting.
But maybe it's a thing that how they were created, but it does draw us to them, I think, because we're drawn to, because the more a person suffers, the stronger they show themselves to be, unless they are defeated by the suffering. So my point would be that in a sense we do want our heroes or superheroes to suffer because that shows strength of character. And we want a strong hero, superhero. We want them to be strong in character. And also the more villainous, the more evil a villain is, the more good a superhero or hero can be shown to be, and the more powerful they can be shown to be. So I think there's that side of it, that we need them to suffer to show us how amazing they are and to inspire us.
Maybe I have a slightly different take on that, because I think for me it's the part that makes them human.
Yeah.
That suffering, because there is a lot of that in the world, and maybe for me that's the hook. I can relate to him because the superhero or the hero stuff we cannot really relate to, because most of us do not live lives like that.
How do you know?
But
you don't know nothing about me.
But the pain and suffering we can relate to. Often people can relate to that.
Everyone can relate to that in some way, in some shape or form, even if it's not to the extreme that these guys or girls
go through
have suffered.
Okay, so let's make it a little bit less serious now. What kind of Batman would you like to see in future films?
Right. So there are many aspects to Batman. And I haven't talked a lot about the comics, but there are some fantastic comics. I absolutely haven't read all of them. I'm going to admit there must be a bigger Batman fan out there, but I've read some, and there are some very different styles of Batman. Like in one place, he's more of a ninja, more martial arts. In another place, he's more of a detective. In another place, he's a lot of difficult issues to deal with. He's very emotional. He's very erratic. In some, there's a comic where it's called Batman R.I.P. Rest in Peace.
Rest in Peace.
And he is actually gone crazy. He goes crazy in this comic, and his villains actually make him think or become crazy with drugs and stuff like that. And it's so interesting because he comes back from craziness he has already prepared for this eventuality. Like, as unreal as it is, he's prepared for that by having in his subconscious another Batman who is kind of a crazy Batman. It's called Batman of now I'm gonna test my memory. Raz-Ur or something. I don't remember exactly, but it's a Batman from another kind of dimension.
Okay.
And he's got an imaginary friend, and his suit is colorful, and he's a weirdo.
Okay.
But he's still Batman. And he's still fighting, and he ends up winning that battle.
Okay.
Spoiler alert, you might have guessed. So there are lots of versions, but for me, I think what hasn't been done, and which is quite similar to the cartoon that I love so much, is the detective side. Because the cartoon focused on, it had Batman with ninja skills and fighting, but most of all, he was a good detective.
Okay.
World-class detective.
Okay.
So I think that hasn't been done enough of. And that should be, it was touched on in films, but I think that needs to be focused on more. And that would be great.
That sounds very interesting. So this is news to me, of course. Strange, but apparently Robert Pattinson is to be the new Batman. Is this true, or is it rumor?
So, as I understand, as far as I know, this is a real thing. He's been cast in a film that will be released in 2021 if all goes to plan. And I think it's just called The Batman, at least for a moment. You know, who knows? As I understand, it's still in the early stages. And actually, I've heard, and I mean, this could change, I don't know, but I've heard that it might show Batman more of a detective, so I'm keen on that.
Okay,
But Robert Pattinson, if you don't know, is the guy from Twilight. I mean, most people think of him as the guy for Twilight, but he was also in Harry Potter. He's been in lots of indie films, and he is a good actor.
He's a good actor. It's just, I sometimes feel that people struggle if someone was typecast as he was in Twilight. He is the vampire.
But that was a long time ago.
It's not so long. It's still very popular. That was a very popular set of films. And but still being watched.
But, well, I would argue that he's the kind of people who love those most. Maybe young teenage girls.
They won't watch Batman.
Either have moved on or they're not the biggest Batman fans.
The advantage is in Batman, as Batman, you won't really recognize him as Robert Pattinson.
So the thing is,
he's quite cool.
He might very well. He's a tall guy. He's
cool. His personality is cool and calm and aloof. A little bit like Christian Bale, actually.
Interestingly, I think Christian Bale. By the way, Christian Bale's England, which he's convincing as an American guy, but also Robert Pattinson too.
Yep.
So I didn't know that till earlier today. I was doing a bit of research.
You also did some homework.
I also did some homework. And he's actually been born in London. And I was watching him in an interview, and he was, of course, speaking with an English accent. I go, what?
He was speaking English.
And English with an English accent.
English.
Something that I don't have though from the UK. I'm not English. I'm Northern Irish English. But but he's convincing. I think. Do you know what? I think it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, he's not Batman. He's a representation of Batman.
Absolutely.
And like Michael Keaton did it. The other actors did it. Even like Michael Keaton was controversial. Ben Affleck was controversial. And to me, they were good Batman.
Okay.
I like Ben Affleck. I like the style of Ben Affleck's Batman. Although I don't love the films that they produced. I like the style. I like the bulkiness. And he was a big, muscular, tough Batman, a different style of Batman. And I think there's room for another type of Batman too.
Okay. Question. Plural of Batman. Batmans or Batmen?
I would say Batman.
Okay.
Batman.
Just checking. Interesting.
Well, you gotta keep their Bat people.
Bat crazy? Something? Okay. Last question, Sam.
I'm not that crazy.
I'm not sure after this interview.
That voice, that was when I watched.
Why do they do that?
Well, Michael Keaton, I didn't really notice a huge difference in his voice. I mean, he did make his voice deeper, but it wasn't such a huge difference compared to
Christian Bale's.
Like, to me, when I first heard that, I was like, what? That's too much, I thought. But it's become iconic. It's become Batman. People have gotten used to it, I think.
Okay, last question. If Batman films, comics, and other media were no longer made, would it affect you? I think we all know the answer to this, but would it affect you?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't mind at all.
What?
No. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of shocked that they're making so many Spider-Man films. But while I like Spider-Man, I'm not a lover of Spider-Man. So I'm sure there are people out there who are like, great, we love Spider-Man, we want more and more and more. And that's fine. And it's not that I dislike it, I just think there's no need for so many. Whereas if they were making, and they probably are going to make as many Batman films, I can lap them all up. I'll watch them all.
Excellent.
I'll watch them all. But what I don't want is more poor Batman films. Because let's be honest, some of them aren't good. And I will admit it. Batman and Robin, I actually quite enjoy Batman and Robin. It's George Clooney. It's so wacky and it's stupid. But I do actually like watching it. It's kind of funny. Whereas Batman Forever, it's not as wacky, all out wacky. I'm not as big a fan of that. do not like Justice League at all.
Okay.
At all. Not impressed with it in the slightest. I rewatched it recently and I dislike it even more because I think there's not very little substance to it. I know it was a difficult film for those involved, and there were a couple of different directors involved, and a tragedy and involved in that. But so I want more Batman, but I want the right Batman.
You want the right stuff.
So, and for me, as if it's good stuff, and there is a lot of good Batman stuff out there. That's the main thing, and there I will always rewatch and even reread Batman comics and films.
Okay, excellent.
So yeah, as long as it's the right stuff.
Excellent.
So there you go. Do you want to say it?
No, that was the crack.
That was the crack.
Why Sam loves Batman so much.
Yeah, and I said really like because I don't want my wife to be jealous, but I really like Batman.
I think if your wife listens to this podcast, she's going to ask you if you know as much about her as you do about Batman.
So I'll moving swiftly on.
So we talked about the films, a little bit about the different media that there are, why and how I became interested in Batman, when I became interested in Batman, what I think is the best representation of Batman, the best actor, and so on. Have I ever dressed up as Batman? Well, if you're only listening now, go back and find out. Why we think Batman's so popular, and do we want our superheroes or heroes to suffer? And about the future of Batman, what we expect in films especially, and Robert Pattinson. I think it's going to be an interesting time.
Cool.
So that was the crack about why I really like Batman.